day at a time, babe.
One day at a time.
Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I'm Ashley Sledge.
And I'm Ken Sledge.
And let's defend horror.
So today we are joined by somebody that's been on the channel numerous times, one of my best friends on the entire planet, Nick from the Lost River Drive-In. How you doing today, brother?
Well, I'm having to do this on my phone, so I'm kind of mad about that. But I'm good. I'm doing all right, man. I'm glad to be back here with both of you guys and to be defending a movie from a series that I know Ashley loves.
It's my favorite.
Yes, but I know you hate this movie, so I'm excited.
It's my least favorite, but
Yeah.
I have some positives. I have a few positives.
Yeah, actually on a rewatch, I don't dislike this movie as much as I remember disliking it. But
yeah,
we'll talk about that here in a minute. But for those of you that don't know Nick or the Lost River Drive-In, you've been living under a rock or something. All of his links are down in the description. His social media links, his YouTube link. Make sure you're checking him out. He is one of the busiest dudes in horror between all the different things he's doing with all his other podcasts. He's got another new one coming out here soon, which is just like, holy shit, dude.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make time for all these different things that you're doing?
I don't. I just do it. Yeah, we actually went back on the podcast. We went to about once a month now because Christian is doing a bunch of stuff for like Paramount and a lot of other places. They're now sending him their movies and he has to do reviews on his channel and whatnot. And then I work 50 hours a week, have a kid part-time.
Right.
So there's not a ton of time. What I've been doing lately, honestly, is I put my kid to bed and I record an upload. And then after I record it, I edit it while I'm sitting on my couch watching something. And then I upload it the next day. And that's just kind of become my routine because, as you know, it'll get stale real quick. If you're not consistently putting out content, your channel will get stale. People won't, they won't come. So it's kind of it's a gift and a curse. I love it, but there are days, man, where I'm fried and I'll be like, I don't want to sit in front of this camera right now. But you know, you do it.
Yeah,
that's part of the grind.
Absolutely.
Making sure that you're pushing through everything to keep it going.
Just fly on the edge of your seat.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Nick, do you want to tell everybody what movie we are defending today?
So we are defending a movie that from, let's see, 2009. So I was 15. 15-year-old Nick from opening night loved. And I can tell you that everybody in my theater did not feel the same way as me. I could just tell. And that is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Yes.
It's a doozy.
Yeah. One thing I will say about this movie, this is the most Friday the 13th Halloween movie, in my opinion, that there is. I think that there's a lot of Friday the 13th influence on this movie. I think Rob Zombie having the complete and total creative control definitely helped him to come back into this film. So
it's very Rob Zombie. You can definitely tell it's very Rob Zombie for sure.
Now, to make everything fair across the board, we always use Rotten Tomatoes scores. Now, we always want to remind everybody, Rotten Tomatoes critics aren't the biggest fan of horror, so they're going to be a little lower on their scores anyway, but the tomato meter on this movie was 23%. The audience score was 44%. So
which is actually kind of surprising. I thought they would be like closer together with both of their percentages.
This is another movie I feel like has gotten a lot of traction as like a cult classic. The older it's gotten, more people are going back and rewatching it and actually enjoying it once you can get past some of the other things. We today are talking about the theatrical version. We are not talking about the director's cut. This is strictly on the theatrical version. So do you want to tell us some of the major criticisms that we read on Rotten Tomatoes about the film?
So some of them I read was there's no redeemable characters. There's gruesome violence that takes precedence over character development. They changed Dr. Loomis's character, which I have to say I completely agree. Okay. Some of the camera work is bad. The scenes with his mother, horse, and child are too supernatural and don't really fit. And I have to add this one just because it made me chuckle. It said at one point in the film, a character is accused of
Profiteering.
profiteering. I can't say the word off of the misery of others, and that is exactly what Rob Zombie is doing with this movie. I can't wait.
that made me laugh. Like,
Yeah.
in this movie, Dr. Loomis is profiteering off the misery of others, which is exactly what Rob Zombie is doing. If you watch this
So that
film,
made me chuckle a little bit.
I actually like, Dr. Loomis throughout the film. I think he's a douche, but I actually like his redemption arc.
He does redeem himself in the end, but just the way I feel like they made him an asshole,
right?
Where he's kind of a crazy asshole, but you feel,
he wasn't money hungry or anything like that before, and I agree. But obviously, like, those are some of the Rotten Tomatoes scores. Those are some of the things that we read as criticisms on Rotten Tomatoes. But why would you say this movie means so much to you and it's worth defending to you, Nick?
Well, because I wouldn't say I'm morbid or a nihilist. I wouldn't go that far. I like to think of myself as a glass half full kind of guy, but I think that too often in Hollywood, it's always there's a happy ending. There's a everybody's redeemed, everything's great, everything's fine, and in reality, that is not always the case. We oftentimes see people battle their demons and overcome them, but if you're an American, especially America, you realize, given our whether it's the healthcare system, whatever it may be, sometimes you don't get out of it. Sometimes there is no happy ending. There's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And the sad truth about trauma, sometimes, Jamie Lee Curtis, trauma, but the sad truth is sometimes it does overcome people. It really, really does. And sometimes it's kind of like the theme of the original Halloween movie. Like, it's about fate. Like, your fate is your fate. I mean, whether you're religious or not, I believe that all of our fates are etched in stone the moment we're born. How we're going to die, when we're going to die, how our lives are going to go. We're going to make those decisions of our own free will and our own volition, but there's nothing we can do about it. It's etched in stone.
I completely agree with that. And I don't mind the ending of this movie. I like the ambiguity of what's happening here at the end of this movie. We really have no idea, how much of it was in her head, how much of it is her trying to move on, how much is it, her trying to cope through what's happened to her. So I agree with you. I don't think life always has a happy ending. To see that she's, in a really dark place to end the film, I think that's a perfect way to end this film, especially with how the rest of the film played out. And I don't mind, obviously, as horror fans, we don't mind the brutality of this film.
No. I mean, I like the brutality. That is one of the positives for me.
And I've always said Tyler is just, he is so amazing, and he's just brutal and huge. And
for sure,
this movie really seals the fact that I think he's my favorite Myers, with how dark and just scary and huge he is, and seeing that grizzly beard under the mask, like, he just looks like a scary dude.
Yeah, and it's not through any fault of Laurie that she succumbs to what she does, because this movie, I think, makes a good point to show she's in therapy. She lives with her best friend. She has a support system. It's not like the events from the first movie happened and she just said, well, that's it, I'm done, might as well just die. No, she tried. She really tried. And sometimes you're just, it's almost like you can run. I think of like It Follows. Like, run as fast as you can, but it's still coming. Fate never changes. And do what you may. I don't know. It's kind of beautifully tragic. That's the way I've always put this movie. Is it's almost like a beautiful tragedy, and I love that.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I get that. Can you tell us some of your favorite moments from the film?
Well, this movie has my favorite kill in the entire series, which is Octavia Spencer's kill. I think that is one of the most unforgiving kills I've ever seen in a movie. And it's not even just how brutal Myers is in it. It's the camera work. It's Octavia's acting. It's just brutal. Like, it's absolutely unforgiving. And I love that. I love, personally, the moment where Laurie's running through the woods, and it's kind of in slow-mo, and you really get like the moon lighting throughout the trees. There's just a lot of cinematography in this movie that I think is just like on point. I love it. And then it's really just the palette, the way the movie looks in general. It's almost like all the colors have been like desaturated. The life has been like sucked out of it, and it's perfect for this kind of movie because it's a very kind of dark, drudgy, depressing kind of experience. And I love that about the movie. But pretty much
Yeah.
anytime Michael's on screen, it's like otherworldly. Like he is a tank. Like you, I've always said, and I will maintain this version of Myers, I think, could take on Jason Voorhees and win. I really, really do think that, because this guy he's something else. He really is. And it's nice to hear, people that don't like this movie, they still love Tyler Mane. They're still like, Tyler Mane it's unavoidable. You cannot lie. He's incredible.
Yeah.
He's just a monster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he's absolutely a monster throughout this whole film. And like you talked about a little bit ago, and I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but in doing our research for this film, I'm pretty sure I read that they filmed this on film. There was nothing digital happening throughout this movie, and that's something for me that I think is really important, because we were talking about how the film looks, the look of the film, and knowing they filmed this on actual film rather than doing it on a digital and then trying to make it look kind of like the Sinister thing.
Yeah.
How Sinister did all those shots
Super 8.
on the Super 8. I feel like I read that they did a lot of this movie with no digital at all. It was all on film to give it that great
16 millimeter. Yep. Yeah. It was 16 millimeter film.
That's awesome. Again, that's very Rob Zombie. The darker, like graininess, like that's just how he does his movies.
Well, and it gives you that 70s, 80s horror movie feel.
For sure.
It gives you that feeling of watching the first couple Halloween movies, watching the first couple Friday the 13th movies, and it really gives you that feeling in your chest of, this is where I want to be in watching this movie. There's nothing digital about it. There's no CGI. There's no clean swipes. It just looks really, really grainy and dirty. And like you have to go adjust the tracking. Like that's how I feel when I'm watching it. And I absolutely adore it. So
takes you back to the good old days.
Yep. We already talked about your favorite kill a little bit with Octavia Spencer when she gets the face cut and then just the brutality of it afterwards. But would you say that is your absolute, you said it's your favorite kill in the franchise, right?
Yeah, it's my favorite kill in the franchise, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention, to your previous question about like some of my favorite moments. Easily, I think the strongest moment in this movie is Annie's death. When Laurie finds her and Laurie's response, and then when Brackett finds her. It's just, I say what you will about Rob Zombie, say what you will about his 2 movies. I don't think there's been a more emotional moment in a Halloween movie. I don't think there is. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is one of my positives of this movie is Brad Dourif and Danielle Harris. Like I think that they did amazing.
And this is one thing that I will say is in the director's cut, because actually I just recently watched both of these. I do like the theatrical version a lot more, and I think that's why maybe I have a better taste in my mouth for this movie, because just like with Rob Zombie's Halloween, I had only seen the director's cut before this, and the director's cut of Rob Zombie's Halloween left a really bad taste in my mouth. The director's cut of this, hearing Michael talk, really bothered me. And I know that's just a little moment, and it shouldn't, but that's something that tore me down when I heard him yell, "Die!" to Dr. Loomis. Because that's not, like that was just something that I couldn't stand. But the director's cut version of Brackett and Annie is just, oh my God, that much more sad. And it's moments like that where you're like, Brad Dourif is a fucking actor.
Oh, he is, absolutely.
Like he's
not just a voice of Chucky, he is an actor.
Or a guy to bring in to do like a beginning of your movie, like Urban Legend, like a cameo guy. You don't even have to be a parent, but as a parent, that part breaks you even more, watching him hold his little girl. Like, so that's another redeeming quality of this movie is the real emotion that gets put into this movie, where we've already watched her go through hell and back and survive it, and then now this happens. So I could not agree with you more, man. Yeah,
for sure. Can you think of any one-liners or quotes from this movie that stuck with you?
I can. So they're really mean-spirited, but like when Loomis says, "When I want your opinion, I'll beat it out of you."
When I want your opinion, I'll beat it out of you.
Made me laugh. He's like, when he says, "Bad taste is the petrol that drives the American dream," which is absolutely true. It absolutely is true. I also, pretty much anything to do with Annie and Laurie, and that's one thing about the director's cut that I will give credit to. I do prefer the theatrical as well because of the ending. But the moment at the breakfast table that I feel like shouldn't have been cut short in the theatrical cut, where in the theatrical cut, she just says "one day at a time," and then it goes to her appointment. Whereas in the director's cut, you expand upon that, and Lori has a full-blown meltdown at the table and basically talking about how her therapist has no idea what she's talking about. And Annie's like at a loss, like, I don't really know what you want me to do. I don't know how I'm supposed to help you. And that scene, I think, is really important to show the fractured friendship that they have.
Yeah.
Because it's sold in the theatrical cut enough, but the director's cut does a much better job of showing their friendship is. I mean, like the moment that she says, like, anytime I look at her and I see those scars, I'm just reminded of that night. And the scene in the bedroom where she's drinking and watching the music videos, and Annie kind of is like, "You're basically a bum. Like you've just become a bum at this point. I don't know what you're doing." And they scream. She's like, "Get out of my room." That stuff is really, really good. But it's probably a lot of Loomis's lines. Honestly, they're really memorable. Because he's an asshole in this movie.
He is an asshole. He is.
Yeah, and then Jeff Daniel Phillips at the strip club. He's got some great one-liners too. When he's talking about sending somebody to the emergency room and says, "Copy that downtown." Yeah, he's great in the movie too. So
yeah,
it's a lot of the one-liners, like you said, they're mean-spirited, but they're memorable just because of the delivery and how they're delivered throughout the film. So we talked earlier about some of our biggest criticisms that we've read online of the film, but what would you say some of your criticisms towards the film would be?
I get why Zombie did it, but I could have used more of the theme music throughout the movie. I know he wanted to differentiate from the other Halloween movies and have this movie kind of stand on its own, and I can respect that, but I missed it. I also personally, I wouldn't have killed Loomis. I wouldn't have done it because although Rob Zombie had said, "I'm not coming back again, so I'm going to wrap up all these loose ends," I would have kept him alive just because, as much of an asshole as he is in this movie, he does redeem himself at the end. He absolutely does. He puts himself into harm's way to try to, I mean, because he feels guilty, but so I wouldn't have killed him. And then really, I think the biggest gripe I've always had about this movie is the white horse. I understand it. They do the title card at the beginning to tell you what it means, what it represents, and you're seeing things from Michael's POV. He's not really a trusted narrator, so you kind of you see that and you go, "Oh, you're insane." So I get the symbolism behind it, but it is kind of just like, why? Why are we doing this though? I was never one of those people that made those YouTube videos with the thumbnails where they were like, and then it's got the picture of the white horse, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, it doesn't make me that mad. It's not that big of a deal, but it is just something that I'm like, do we have to do this though? So, yeah.
See, and I think that supernatural stuff like that really is, in my opinion, I'm not trying to push this on anybody else. That's my Friday the 13th influence on the film, with how much Michael is still communicating with his mother and how mother still has control over him. Yeah. And I think that's why I've softened up to the movie.
Maybe that's why I don't.
Maybe that's why you've gotten harder on the movie.
Yeah, I'm like.
To me, I feel like this is the most Friday the 13th type Halloween film that we could have gotten. And again, I love that. So over the years, and especially watching the theatrical version, I am one of those people that I hold on to a scene, and it just that's what sticks with me is the big SA scene in the first one in Rob Zombie's Halloween. Like after seeing that director's cut, I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And then in this one, the die, like that really got me bummed out. I was like, no, the whole thing about him is grunting is one thing. He is, it's still a human shell.
Right.
But to hear him actually talk, I don't know, that just really, really bummed me out.
And a lot of things that I didn't hear people ever mention with the David Gordon Green trilogy, Michael grunts a shitload in those movies too. Like multiple points, you can hear him grunt. He gets shot and he goes, or whatever it might be. But no one ever said anything about it. But with Rob Zombie's movies, it was like, oh, he grunted. Yeah, he's a human.
He's still human.
Even though he's completely evil, he's pure evil. That's still a human shell.
Yeah.
He's gonna feel pain, and obviously he feels pain. He feels betrayal. That's why he became who he became in the Rob Zombie timeline. So I don't mind the grunting, but when it came to the actual, hearing him talk, that just it was a huge turnoff for me.
No, you don't do that to Michael. I understand why Rob said he goes, well, I wanted this to be like this is different. I get that, but this is still Michael Myers. You're
Right.
playing in
Yeah.
a sandbox, and there's something you don't do in that sandbox. And so the studio had the right decision to go, no, you can't put that in the theatrical cut. You want to put that on your DVD, go for it, but it ain't going in theaters. So
Right.
Absolutely.
And look, that's like having a movie where Freddy Krueger is mute.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
like that doesn't work. Like that's, you know, like that's part of the charm of this villain that we love, and which is
Yeah.
weird because we're talking about how much we love this villain, but there's certain things about these villains that really, really captures us. And with Michael, it was always the mysterious,
Mhm.
you know. And even in the DGG trilogy, it starts with "say something,"
Yeah.
you know, like that's the whole thing. Like, oh gosh, yeah. So, I'll
So,
leave that out there.
Nick, is this your favorite in the franchise?
it's my second favorite. I'm
Second
not
favorite?
deluded enough to say that okay, I shouldn't even say that because look, this October when I rewatched all these movies except Resurrection, didn't rewatch it.
Ah,
I can watch
Okay.
it about once every 5 years. I know you have a soft
Oh,
spot for it.
man.
But I was sitting there when it was over and I was like, do I like this more than the original? Like seriously? But I guess the way that I come down on it is no. It's number 2 for me because everything I love about Halloween 2 wouldn't exist without the original. The original
Right.
is the blueprint. And that's a reductive way of thinking sometimes because there are sequels that I will say are better than the original, but
Yeah.
Halloween specifically means so much to me that I'm like, without that original, none of these happen, and I just can't put anything above it. But
Mhm.
Which
we're talking,
completely understandable.
I get it.
yeah, and we're
Yeah.
talking Razor's Edge. I mean,
Mhm.
Razor's Edge. It's right there. I love this movie, and I make it an event when I watch this movie. I only watch it in October now, and I
Mhm.
always watch it the night before Halloween
That's
because
awesome.
it's
Yeah.
just yeah.
It's like a tradition
Yeah.
now.
So, you know, we obviously talk about being critics and what these movies mean to us. And I've always said there's no such thing really as a perfect movie. So we do want to rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're going 0 to 10, and we are being critics this time. We're being critical. What would your ranking be of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, 0 to 10 skulls?
Look, you want me to put my critic glasses on and come from it unbiased? I would say that, like, objectively speaking, I think it's really well shot. I think it's super well acted. I think the story makes sense. I think that the effects are top notch and they're all real effects. I think that Michael Myers is scary again in his own way. He's truly like a freight train. There's some disjointed stuff with the mom and the horse at times. There's not enough Loomis. No matter what his character arc is in this movie, there's just not enough. I would say objectively, if I'm a critic and I looked at this with it not being like, oh my God, they savaged my favorite franchise. I really do think it's like an 8, man. Like technically sound across the board. I
Mhm.
just think that you can walk out of movies sometimes and go, like, Talk to Me was a movie that I walked out of and I went, that movie was super well done, but it just didn't
Mhm.
resonate with me. So I gave it like 3.5. I was like, but I cannot say it wasn't good because it is
Right.
objectively good. And I do feel like Halloween 2 is one of those movies, but it's not for the faint of heart. And it's not for anybody that wants a happy ending because
Right.
you're just not going to get it. Now, as a fan, I give it perfect marks across the board. I'd give it 10 as a fan with my bias. I just would. There's 3 Halloween movies that I would give that to, and this is one of them. But as a critic, 7.5 or 8, something like that. I think that that's like what C plus B minus territory.
Yeah.
Which is still fine.
I
It's
think
still
that's
passing.
fair.
Yeah.
Better than any grade I ever got.
Yeah.
What would you rank it, my love?
All right, you want to hear this? I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 10. Like I said, it's my least favorite in the franchise. I do see the positives and I do understand why people love it. It's just a lot of Rob Zombie stuff just isn't for me. And I guess I don't like how they make Michael, like they give him an excuse to be evil. Like I hate that part of it. And I hate the white horse and the mom. Like that takes me out of it. But like I
The only
said,
time the white horse and mom thing really bothered me is when Lori can see mom and the little Michael at the that's
And
the part.
she's like, yeah.
When mom's hold that's the only part of it that
Like,
really. And I get it because they're family. Maybe there's that family connection of that's why she can see. But
yeah,
that was just the part for me that
Rob
with the
explained
whiteboard
that as
parts
shared
bothered me.
madness. He explained
Yeah.
that as shared insanity. That's what he
Yeah.
said. That that was representation that because they are family, she shares the same kind of psychosis.
Yeah.
But I understand your rating because, like I said, even as if you look at it objectively, you can look at it objectively and go, but it just didn't work for me. I'm not saying it's bad. It just didn't work for me. So
It didn't work for me because of how I feel about the rest of the franchise. But again, there's positives also. Brad Dourif, Daniel Harris. Like, I like the brutality. Like, I can tell you these positives, but yeah, it's my least favorite. So that's me. 4 out of 10.
Every time I watch this movie, I like it more and more. I'm actually going to give it a 5.5, which is still a pretty high ranking for me.
Wow, I'm
I know you're the low one this time.
Like, I'm
never happens that way.
I need you to get to a 6 by next year, so then it's technically passing, and then we're good.
A D.
But yeah, the more I watch, especially it went up for me a lot watching the theatrical version over the director's cut. Like having the opportunity to actually sit down and watch the theatrical version. Because neither one of these movies played by us when they came out.
No.
Neither Rob Zombie's Halloween movie played within 2 hours of us when they first came out. So we didn't get to see the theatrical versions. And when they had finally come out on physical media, again, there wasn't all these streaming services back then that were playing the movies 2 weeks after they came out. When it finally did come out on physical media, it was just way easier to get a copy of the director's cut than it was the theatrical cut for both these films. So to actually be able to sit down, watch the theatrical version, I gained a lot of love and respect for the film and what Rob Zombie did. And like you were talking about earlier, how he went to, he pulled out all the stops to make sure this movie looked great. Going back and filming it on film, which I know doesn't seem like a big deal, but very little is filmed on actual film today. And to do a whole film like that nowadays is almost unheard of. So it gets a couple extra points just for that alone. So I'm going to go with a 5.5 out of 10.
Nice. All right, Nick. So we're going to do your final defense. You have 30 seconds to sell this movie to someone, why they should rewatch it or why they should watch it for the first time. What are you going to tell them?
I think Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is perfect for anybody that has struggled at all in their life. I think that Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, you can live vicariously through some of these characters and remind yourself that it can always be worse. I also think that Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is arguably the most well-acted movie in the entire series, whether that's Danielle, whether that's Brad, whether that's Scout. I think everybody in this movie is great. I think that this movie is an experience that will take a toll on you, and it's supposed to. And I think at the very least, you will walk away from this movie feeling something, whether that's outrage, whether that's happiness. It will make you feel. And sometimes that's the best thing a movie can do, is make you feel.
Right. Well, that was 32 seconds, so that doesn't matter. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's perfect.
No, and I really hope that you guys go back. If you did watch this movie and you didn't give it, the second thought, go back and watch the theatrical cut of this film. Just give it a second chance, because I'm telling you guys, I just did. I just watched the theatrical version for the first time. This was always towards the bottom of my list. I would actually put this right in the middle of my Halloween ranking now. And that's just from one watch of the theatrical version, not getting, to really dissect it and sit and stew on it. So I would really like to sit down and watch this a couple more times and see if it goes up a little bit. But if you guys haven't, please check out the theatrical version. If you have seen this movie, let us know in the comments. What do you think of this movie? What are your pros? What are your cons? What is your overall feeling on Rob Zombie's Halloween 2? So I know I said it at the beginning, guys, but we're at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, I have all of the Lost River Drive-Ins links down in the description. So make sure you're following on social media, subscribing on YouTube to become part of his family as well. Nick, please don't go anywhere. We got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Our links are down in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror.
Stay who you are.
And we'll see you guys soon.
Bye, guys.